Hello everyone, I'm come to talk about the diapasons on the organ at Gloucester Cathedral. Now, diapason is a slightly obscure word, but it basically describes what the man or woman in the street would consider to be a typical organ pipe. It's made of metal, it's got a pointy bit at the end and a hole a little way up and then another hole at the top. So it's a typical organ pipe. But the word itself is rather obscure. It comes from an ancient Greek phrase, Diapason chordon symphonia, which means sort of concord throughout the notes. Now that's a slightly pompous way of describing it, but it means many things to many different people. And through history, the word diapason, without its following two words, has meant all sorts of things. I mean, even now it means something completely different in French. But in the Middle Ages in English, it meant an octave, or sometimes any interval. In 17th century literature, Milton and that sort of thing, it means just a glorious combination of sounds. And even now in French, it describes a tuning system, or I believe even the tuning fork in certain instances. And in singing, it means a different way, a way of singing, a technique of singing. So it's got all sorts of meanings. But during the 16th century in England, it came to mean the standard sound of an organ, probably because of its original meaning sounds evenly everywhere. And Gloucester is especially blessed, not because it owns very many diapasons in the organ. In fact, it has rather fewer diapasons than most comparable organs, but because of what you can see behind me are two fantastic organ cases. The small one in front, which is called the chair organ, dates, it is thought, from 1640 and has little diapason pipes in it, as you can see. It's very ornate. The bigger one behind, it is thought, dates from 1666 by a famous organ builder at the time called Thomas Harris. And it has very large diapasons on the outside, gloriously painted. Now, the reason that Gloucester is fortunate is not just because the cases have their own intrinsic beauty, but because in so many cathedrals in the country, organs like that standing on stone screens were destroyed. I mean, at our sister cathedrals of Worcester and Hereford nearby, their organs were destroyed, partly by Oliver Cromwell and his gang in the 17th century, but there was equal amount of destruction in the 19th century as well, when the fashion was for you to be able to stand at the west end of the cathedral and see right the way through to the east end without having an organ in the way. Anyway, it is thought that the chair organ, which was there before Oliver Cromwell's era of destruction, was taken out just before the trouble began. And it lived in Bristol for 20 years and then came back here in the 1660s. So that's how that survived. And the big case survived the destruction of the 19th century, which was also fashionable, you know, the improvement of everything, because it's got lots of local families' coats of arms painted on the pipes. That's the theory, anyway. So there we are. That's the sort of what diapasons look like and what they're doing up there. Strictly speaking now, in England, diapasons, there's two well-known phrases with the word diapason. And there's open diapason, which are those ones that you can see, and then the stop diapason. Typical England having something so confusing. A stop diapason isn't a diapason at all. It's made of wood rather than metal. And that will be the subject of another talk in a few weeks' time. But our typical open diapason has the same pitch as piano. So middle C on an 8-foot open diapason is the same as middle C on the piano. And it's described as being 8 foot because the bottom C of the keyboard, 58 notes on the keyboard, the bottom C is a pipe about 8 foot long. And then the octave above is 4 foot long, the octave above that is 2 foot long, and so on. But when the organ was rebuilt It's had regular rebuilds through the centuries. When it was rebuilt in 1971, quite a lot of the old diapasons were taken away, but not, fortunately, most of the 17th century ones. So Gloucester Cathedral has more surviving 17th century organ pipes than any other cathedral in England, which is another source of pride for us that work here, and fortunate enough to work here. So that's enough about theory and what you can see. I'll just play some sounds now, but you'll have to give me a minute to get up to the organ loft. All we have in this organ actually are 2 diapasons on the great organ, and 1 rank faces east and 1 rank faces west, and then we have some bass diapasons for the feet, which are 16 foot long. The longest pipe is 16 foot, and then we have just a tiny little bit of diapason in the choir organ, the little case there. So what I shall do is I shall play a few bars of the east diapason, then a few bars of the west diapason, which might be slightly difficult to hear because we're standing on the east, and then I shall add the 4-foot diapasons, which are generally known as principals, and then I'll play a little piece on the chair organ, which was contemporary with the building of the chair organ by Thomas Tompkins. Thank you for listening.